much like a museum curator. Hey, Allison, hold off just for a second. I've got one thing that I wanted to share before I turn it over to you. Much like a museum curator who puts beautiful works of art up along the walls for people to enjoy, we're here to celebrate Allison and her journey here at One Stone. And so I do have one short video clip that I'd like to share about Allison, and then we'll turn the time over to Allison. Yeah, pretty amazing. Okay, with that, we'll turn the time over to Allison.
All right, so this is going to be in the style of we'll call it a dramatic reading, and we'll see if it ends up being a dramatic reading. I don't have any cool photos like that presentation though, so maybe it won't hit as hard. I mean, I hadn't even seen that before, but let's get on with it. So a lot of this stuff will probably be review. Like my name, I think you all know my name. I don't know. A couple folks in here. Nah, I'm sure it's fine. I'm Allison Pelton. I'm a One Stone student. Wow, really? Who'll graduate in 2021, hopefully. This website is documentation of my journey since joining One Stone in the fall of 2018. So let's start with an introduction to me. There's a lot more to me than what I've done at One Stone, so let's go over that. One Stone, we have a special way of getting to know a little bit about people in a fun way called a One Stone introduction. You share your name, grade, or profession and answer a trivial question. It can be anything from your favorite music genre to what kind of flower you'd like to be. So we have a bit more time. I'll go ahead and talk about my interests. If you're only here for my One Stone work, feel free to skip this section, but you can't because I'm narrating this, and this is intended for the other people who might be looking at my portfolio. It's long, but you might learn something about me. Or maybe not, because a lot of this stuff you may know. But let's find out. My interests change frequently, but there are a few that have stuck with me through the years. Here's an incredibly brief overview that honestly kills me with how much it leaves out, yet is likely boringly over-detailed. I've pretty consistently been interested in video games. Whether it was some strange handheld pinball game or Space Cadet 3D pinball, I first got into pinball around the age of 3. From there, I moved on to casual PC games. Before I was allowed on the internet, this meant playing the games built into Windows XP. I learned how to play backgammon, reversey, various card games I've likely since forgotten. I don't remember how to play any of those games. But then for Christmas 2008, I got a Nintendo Wii, and though I was never any good at the games I played, that didn't stop me from enjoying Wii Sports, Wii Fit, Mario Kart, Super Mario Galaxy, and Guitar Hero. Actually, Guitar Hero was responsible for my taste in music. Through it, I fell in love with Muse, System of a Down, Lacuna Coil, Nirvana, and many more bands. I didn't actually spend that much time on the Wii though. In 2010, what I consider the golden age of mobile gaming before apps were ruined with microtransactions, that's when I got an iPad. And I couldn't even begin to list the games I played. And recently, I've in fact revisited some. A few days ago, I just re downloaded a little puzzle game called Cut the Rope, and I'm a lot better at it now, but I gotta say that it's nostalgic. In 2012, I got into Minecraft and I must have put 3,000 hours in it. I also started a YouTube channel, which I kept working on through 2018. I made over 500 videos, but unfortunately, I've lost many of them. I deleted a lot of them because I didn't want to see myself or hear myself, and it was a rash decision that I will probably not get over anytime soon. But I've learned something important: not to delete things out of sadness or embarrassment. My gaming channel also eventually became the sole reason I played video games, so one day I quit and took up cartography. I'm still into the cartography today. I've contributed over half of the data to a collaborative map called OpenStreetMap of Ada County. Seems like such a weird thing to pivot to, but there is actually one thing that all these activities have in common. They weren't solitary. Millions of people use that map. It's used for it's the Facebook base map uses it. The Snapchat map uses it, and it is vital to Pokemon Go, which has hundreds of millions of players. And I'd at least hope to share gameplay videos with interesting commentary with a lot of people on YouTube, but I never hit the big time. And even if I had, I don't know if I would have stuck with that. I only spend a couple hours a week playing video games right now, though that's subject to change drastically. I might get back into it over the summer. I don't really know. But now let's move on to school. We'll start from the very beginning. My very first school experience at the age of 3 at a Montessori school in Boise, Park Center Montessori. Honestly, it was a time in my life. There's not really that much else to it. I was free to explore whatever I was interested in, and I had doting instructors. And, you know, honestly, I wish more learning was like that. But in first grade, I had to find a new school, so off to Riverstone I went. And that completely changed me in the 5 years and a little bit extra that I was there. I never thought the learning could be anything but fun. I can't think of, and I'm maybe looking at the past with rose tinted glasses, but I don't really have any negative memories of learning at Park Center Montessori, but I cannot say the same for Riverstone. What I learned far better than anything else, not how to do math or grammar or handwriting, but that I was different from other students. Different in a way that was inconvenient to others and therefore unwanted. My handwriting was terrible. That's eventually led to my current Y lab. This affected my grade on an assignment that was meant to practice grammar and punctuation. What nonsense! I also had trouble coloring within the lines in, say, art class, and that was far more important than having a sense of creativity, at least if we're going based off the grades I got. One subject in which I could excel without the negative influence of a traditional school structure was math, but I really only had the motivation to go to school because of a single hour in the day where I felt fulfilled as time went on. art, for example, was such a painful class that sometime during 6th grade, I just stopped showing up to it. And it may have been early 7th grade. That is not something I remember that well. And honestly, I'd prefer to keep it that way. Leaving a school mid-semester is challenging, especially with no plans for how to continue my education. It was worth it, though, to escape the toxic mindset that Riverstone had instilled in me. School had become a barrier to my learning, but even worse, it had become a barrier to my living. Anyone who knew me over that interval saw my personality change drastically. I love to say that I figured out homeschool and fought off depression. I love to tell a simple inspirational story about a student taking charge of their learning. Life isn't structured like a story, or at least not a very good one. The pacing is way off for one thing. Life's missing a few key aspects of story too. There's no single moment of triumph, no instant change in conflict, no goal whose achievement brings all narratives to a close. The point is that I count my life not to seek admiration, but to enable empathy. Your challenge, then, is figuring out what's most important when I'm the sum of every experience I've ever had. I figure that a harrowing tale of the darkness I sank into is neither compelling nor relevant. So let's skip that. But there was one thing I want to say about the depression I experienced. I don't have great social skills, so I completely isolated myself when I was homeschooled, which destroyed me mentally. I still struggle with social interaction with other teenagers today and isolate myself from others more than most, although I do believe that I'm significantly more outgoing compared to when I was still homeschooling. According to some random website, I should be about 6 minutes into my presentation, and I don't have a watch, otherwise I'd tell you whether or not that was the case. I imagine that's about the point where I should share a portfolio of my best work at One Stone. So far, what's transpired is more info dump than curation. At least I got the me part down. So let's take a look at the original collection. I've been in 4 design labs. First design lab in fall of 2018, I designed a teen-managed suicide hotline with the Idaho Suicide Prevention Hotline. Unfortunately, I don't know the status of that project. I think the plans were to implement it in 2021 or 2022, and I don't even know if they're permitted to keep us updated on that, but I still stand by the idea, and um, it was at the very least good practice of design thinking. My second design lab was more successful, I would say. In it, we educated elementary school students in Boise School District about health risks of vaping. Fun fact, we originally called it VAPE, Vaping Awareness, Prevention, and Education, but received some feedback that that could actually be confused with the name of a store that sells vape accessories, because apparently a lot of vape stores are called something really simple. Not I guess, you know, they're laconic, but yeah, there's a vape store somewhere in town that's literally just called vape. So we pivoted from that, and I don't know if we decided we didn't really ever get behind a new name as much as we had that one, but the name wasn't important. What was important is that we had activities planned, and we visited several classrooms in three two no three different schools in Boise. For my third design lab, which took place during 2019, our goal was to redesign Story Fort to make it a more popular section of Tree Fort. And I wish I could tell you more about it, but I don't remember much of it, to be honest. And I recently found out that Story Fort doesn't even exist now. So, you know, looking at the positives, I was able to get through that design lab, and I did go up on stage. So I got something out of it. But I did finish off my design labs on a stronger note with Dolphin, even though it was remote and Disruption Day was all remote. I really got, I really got to have the, I'd say, the design lab experience that I'd sort of missed with the previous design lab, sort of attained in the very first one. The main challenge in the first design lab was our pivot so late into the semester, because when we pitched our ideas to the Idaho Suicide Prevention Hotline, our original subject was essentially helping those staffing the hotline with coping mechanisms so that they are not personally affected by the stories they hear. When we presented our findings, we were met with, yeah, those are good ideas. That's why we do them. Was I think I may have been initially embarrassed when I heard that, but later on, I realized that really what that meant is that we'd done a good job researching, and that our findings were not baseless, essentially. But in our fourth and final design lab, bridging the HR employee gap with Dolphin, a service by MetaGeek, I have not kept up with Dolphin in the last year, unfortunately. That's something that honestly I would like to do, but it's kind of just a curiosity, and at the moment, it isn't particularly relevant. But I still stand behind the ideas and prototypes in that design lab, and in the my first design lab, designing the teen suicide hotline. And I wish I knew the status of them to see if they are going to become something real. But otherwise, in terms of the skills I gained from them, they're definitely successes in my book. Now let's look at the 10 community reads, or maybe 11 or 12. Honestly, I don't know. I had to dig deep through and really think hard about the community reads I've been in. There's just been so many. Some of them kind of blur together, and honestly, some of them I don't remember all that well. So I've tried to put them in chronological order, and I may have missed a couple, and the order might be messed up. But I know the very first community read, the summer before starting at One Stone, was The Alchemist. And honestly, out of all of these, it's probably my least favorite. At this point, I don't remember it all that well, but I remember it not being a very compelling story. It almost felt like a self-help book with a narrative, but not a particularly useful one, just like a get motivated one. And those aren't really my thing. So I don't really feel like I gained that much from it. Now, Furiously Happy, on the other hand, it's not really my kind of book. I think it is a well-written book. Furiously Happy is nonfiction, just accounts of someone who leads very unusual life. And now again, while writing my notes for this presentation, I didn't really review much about the books. I reread what I wrote about them. That was about it. I didn't I don't have the books on hand, so I wasn't able to go back and review them. But it is essentially a way, I believe the book was like trying to make the mundane more interesting. And I think that, in an objective sense, it did succeed at that. It just doesn't personally appeal to my tastes, I suppose. Um, but now moving on to The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which is actually, I think anthology is the right term to use, a collection of unusual tales from a psychiatrist. And I remember enjoying it. I'm honestly probably my favorite community read. Um, I've never really tried to rank them, and a lot of it's just been I'm only really focused on what I'm working on at the time. So I'm not often looking back at what I've done. So to do all this at once for a presentation is challenging, and I'm bound to miss out on a few things. So from here on out, I will just give a brief overview, like maybe one sentence of what the book's about and whether or not I liked it. So now we move to The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which is about a teenager in a village in, I think, Namibia. I could be mistaken, whose village had no electricity, and he built a windmill. That I want to specify that this is again nonfiction, and it took him years. This was a very or this is very I don't want to use like an inappropriate term, but the windmill essentially, the windmill was had to be created from scraps and from scratch. So it was it was both an, I'd say, inspiring story, and also just a really interesting in a scientific sense, I'd say. So I guess to put it more formally, anthropologically speaking, an interesting story, and as well as the science behind the windmill, as you explained in the book, being interesting. My fifth community read was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. You might notice a theme here. There are a lot of nonfiction books here. Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. My parents will be very familiar with this, I imagine. Um, and they actually had an interesting perspective to offer me. So, Henrietta Lacks was a black cancer patient whose cells had a unique genetic mutation that caused them to be able to reproduce separately from the rest of her body. So essentially, they were their own organism, and this has never been seen before in anyone else. There are no other human cells like it. So in some sense, they're their own organism, and really, or rather, their own species. It's a really unique situation, but more than just focusing on the scientific aspect, it discusses the ethics behind using her cells for research, because they have been absolutely vital to the medical industry. Um, you can buy her cells online, and there worldwide there are tons of her cells in the unit sense, not in the vague description of uncountability. But it really did raise some ethical concerns, because um, her family was not informed about what was being done with her cells, and her story was not really told until the author decided to investigate it. Like medical students were told about her cells called HeLa cells, but they never really learned about the woman behind it. A lot of people were never even told why they're called HeLa cells. They just called HeLa cells and they accept that, not being completely unaware that. And I believe that this is what my parents said, that they were told that they were HeLa cells, but they never learned why. The next community read was a very non-standard community read. Read this text is not something that you would recognize, because it is a work that a One Stone coach, a former One Stone coach, Matthew Darren, wrote. And his approach to community reads and like all the courses that he led in general was very unique, even by One Stone standards. Um, so not only did I read it, I proofread it. I studied it carefully for issues with um, it's spacing, grammar, spelling, not really so much on the whole typography aspect, like, oh, does the font look nice in the book, or what are the margins supposed to be in the pages. That's kind of moving out of community read territory, but the whole proofreading thing. And I also want to add that this was a book about mathematics exploration in nature, but there's no actual math involved. You're not doing math when you're this exploration is not a matter of doing some math problems. It's a matter of seeing how math is applied to nature, essentially. And I'm not sure how I felt about the text itself, but it was a unique opportunity that I did enjoy. I don't know why, but I kind of just have a passion for proofreading and an eye for detail. So that worked out great for me. Like I often ask my classmates if they have anything for me to proofread, because I enjoy doing that. I sometimes joke that I would pay people to be able to proofread their work. And I don't know if I'd go that far. Usually it's the other way around. You get paid to proofread, but it's fun for me. There's no reason you can't make money from something that you enjoy, but just as a service to others, especially because I really care about the work of others at One Stone, that's something that's really important to me. And so it's an interesting addition to the list of my community reads. And then, surprise, another nonfiction book. This time, Hidden Figures, which is about the African American women, specifically 3 African American women who worked at NASA, who were crucial to the United States. Well, winning the space race is how it's presented. And I don't want to get into a debate about if the US won the space race or if the Soviets did. That's not really relevant. And while it did come up while reading the book, it was more of a curiosity. It wasn't really important to the essence of the book so much as it is a question of about the subject that the book just happens to tackle a very small part of. And it's kind of hard to follow. Like, I don't want to, discredit the author or anything, but the way it flipped around in time and between the three main characters, it focused on to make it seem more of a story with a continuous narrative. Maybe it works for others, but for me, it just made it a lot harder to read and honestly not as enjoyable as it could have been. And now I have another community read. This time it is actually fiction, specifically science fiction. And this was because I was not interested in any of the choices for community read that were provided. So I joined Teal's group where we were able to choose our own book for community read. And in that, I read Brave New World. And um, honestly, that's another book that I don't really remember that well. And it wasn't all that long ago. Um, I think that I think the main issue was that it felt kind of repetitive towards the end, and it was just hard to follow because of that. Like I would have a hard time figuring out if I'd already read a passage. So, sometimes my bookmark would fall out and I wouldn't remember what page I was on. So I just kind of had to guess. It's possible that as a result, I might have even missed out on some segments of the book. Um, I do think that I should revisit it. And I think if I do that, maybe I would be able to appreciate it more. But I, um, for now, it's not really up there with my favorite community reads. And, you know, I have noticed that I have been sort of overall just kind of negative about these community reads. Like I've said good things about a few of some of the early ones. So, I do want to put out that I think part of it has to do with my mood at the time of reading them. And a little bit ironic because read this text was basically middle of the worst part of my depression, and yet I really enjoyed the proofreading aspect. But on the other hand, and I don't really, my portfolio really shouldn't focus on this, and I don't even know if it really belongs on a curation of me, but there were just some coaches whose teaching style didn't really work for me, and Matthew was one of them. So, second most recent community read was actually two table reads with Coach Jesse. So we actually read a couple plays, The Tempest by Shakespeare and Our Town. The author, I can't think of the name of. It is a more contemporary play. I believe it was first published in 1938. And they're vastly different genres. The Tempest is a tragedy. Our Town is a meta theatrical play, so it actually focuses on a playwright, and when the play is performed, the actors make reference to their medium, the stage, and I personally enjoyed it for that reason. And I think I got a little bit of practice in, trying to vary my tone and make my talking more engaging. Um, I don't think I can be a fair judge of that. I could be boring you all to death, um, and I don't mean that. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but I don't mean that in a self-deprecating sense. What I really mean is that it's kind of spurious whether or not that's the case. I feel like it's a possibility, and I do want to put it out there, but if at when you were or once I was done presenting and we moved on to questions, if you're like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, then I would be understanding of that. And now, most recent community read that's not over. On my desk, in fact, Confessions of a Crap Artist by Philip K. Dick. And it is another fiction book. So definitely a recent trend. I don't know if there's enough elements to call it a trend, but from nonfiction to fiction. And it's not because like in the past all the options have been exclusively nonfiction. No, there's definitely been opportunities for both. And I'd say that in terms of books that I read, they tend to be more fiction than nonfiction. I would not say that that is true of my reading in general. Like um, all the time I spend reading, say, the news or articles on various subjects or even academic studies. Um, I not um, I would have to count that separately from the book reading that I do. But unlike the rest of Philip K. Dick's work, because most people know him for his really famous science fiction novels, or maybe even just the film adaptations. Like I personally don't know him. This is the first work of Philip K. Dick that I have read, but according to the back cover, he's had 11 works that have been adapted to film, like Blade Runner, which I have heard of, Total Recall, again, heard of, Minority Report, again, heard of. And, I think that I should read these books and probably watch the films as well. And A Scanner Darkly, which I've never heard of, but might be worth checking out. Um, and again, we're not finished with this community read, but it's though it is a realistic fiction, it is written more in the style of science fiction in some regards, um, and it really delves deep into the main character's psyche. There are four main characters, so I guess I should say each of their respective psyches, if that's even the correct way to pluralize psyche. But I really feel able to connect with them as a result, even if their thought processes are not going to align with mine, which of course they're not. I mean, that's going to be true for pretty much any two people. The way they rationalize things is going to be completely different. It really allows you to empathize with the characters, and for that, it's made this book that deals with, I mean, I'd say at least relative to Dick's other works, mundane subjects. I mean, the characters certainly lead interesting lives. Like one of them is in a doomsday cult, and they're um, it's a home that's shared by a bunch of people who don't really have that much in common, and it's just a very weird um picture of suburbia. It takes place in Bay Area suburb. So, and also it's set in the 1960s. So I can't really relate to any of that at all. But the empathy that's possible in this is really powerful. So that's all my community reads.
Hey,
So,
Allison,
oh,
just
oh,
to
really? Have I?
briefly, no, you're not out of time. I just wanted to let you know you have about 10 more minutes. Hate to
All
interrupt
right.
the flow. And then we want to leave just a few minutes for folks to share maybe
All
some
right.
farewell thoughts.
Allison's Allison's curation of me any percent speed run. There you
No
have
need to
all
do
10
that.
community reads, and now let's move on to math courses. There's not a whole lot to say about them other than I sort of missed out on an opportunity because, unfortunately, Scion left one stone, and, I won't ever know the reasons behind that, but I'd taken a differential calculus course for one semester, and I was looking forward to taking integral calculus the next semester, but my options ended up being kind of stalled. But another thing I want to focus on is life on Mars, because that was the very first course I had at One Stone, and it was multidisciplinary. There were 3 areas, and you were able to choose 2 of them. And I used it to work on my math and my language arts. And I really gained um, a great understanding of like what makes One Stone different by taking that class. My experience would not be the same without it. And honestly, I don't know if or I wouldn't see One Stone the same way without it. And honestly, I don't know if I would have stuck with One Stone without having that experience. Now let's talk about language arts. So as I've mentioned, Life on Mars, and in that, I read a lot of science fiction short stories, several of them dealing with space, and just wrote short blog posts about them, shared them with the class. They ranged from sort of reviews to theories, like alternate ways the plot could have played out. Um, Either way, I got opportunities to practice my writing in a lot of different ways. And in the yearbook, um, I kind of struggled with that experience. And like, I don't remember it all that well at this point. Like, I can't even remember the article I read. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find it like in my Google Drive. I do want to, of course, list that. And with political philosophy, um, you know, kind of got into debate, and I'm not actually sure that that was considered a language art. That might have been in social science. I thing is, I couldn't fit 6 columns onto the page, so I kind of took some liberties. And so ongoing writing with clarity and literary landscape was my first immersion for this semester. And I've never really been a poetry fanatic, but I did sincerely enjoy that immersion, and I was able to deeply analyze a lot of poems. And purpose to prose, not much to say about it. I I was able to write a good essay that I think was vital to my acceptance to my top college. That's really the most important thing about it, honestly. And now consolidating science and computer science on its face, it makes sense. Does kind of serve to bump up the numbers. It sounds really impressive, but I'm working on my final science credit right now, which I sort of need. And since I'm running out of time, I can't really talk about those in a whole lot of detail. But here's one thing with my portfolio reviews, I got a lot of time to, go over what I did and all those. So this more is more just to serve as a reminder of the things I have done. So now we have all the miscellaneous experiences that don't really quite fit in, but they represent unique sort of explorations that I've done. So strumming for life, very did the first semester I was there. Same with Boise Rock School. So I had two music/art credits going at the same time, and feel like at the time those are credit requirements for graduating. Um, I don't know how much came out of them other than some self-discovery, but that's still valuable. One store, been working on it for 3 years, and finally seems like it's going somewhere. Maybe not quite what I envisioned, but I like it. I like that it's finally going somewhere because I stuck with it. I don't want to see it fail. Call it sunk cost fallacy. Glad it's going somewhere. And of course, video game problem solving did over the winter with John, and it was fun, and kind of got to relive what it was like to stream. So, there was a lot more to my streaming career that I talked about previously. Can't really call it a career, I guess, experience, but reminded me that maybe I'm not quite ready to get back into that yet. And recently I've had an immersion Hatch Economics of a Vending Machine, which I did have a hard time getting into. I had a hard time finding a problem that I wanted to solve with a business, and I did sort of figure something out, and it's ended up going more in the direction of social science credit, and that's actually still in progress. But it helped inform what to do for my last immersion, and I'm sure that thinking back to that experience will be useful for decision making in the future. And then we have election 2020, which was kind of like the political philosophy course, and it I enjoy I'm interested in politics. I think that they're very important to follow. And now, built in Boise was an experience that doesn't really fit in with the rest, but I did gain insight on a few local businesses. Climbing the Grand Slam peaks with Will, just an opportunity to get outside and do some exercise in the winter, and wish I could say that it promoted some healthy exercise habits from then on, but that would be a total fabrication. So I have here an image, just a screen grab of every single blog post I made for Life on Mars, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to awkwardly quickly scroll through that, but it kind of gives you an idea of all the writing I got to do, kind of. Wow, this is really long and awkward. So, now that I realize I have 1 minute left, it's hard to figure out what to do with that because there's still several things I wanted to get to. The blob is really quick, and it's honestly just one thing that I want to look at because it's the thing that's going to be more important than anything else going on in my life, and it is that a blob changed how I evaluate my growth. Because and I still fall into this habit of looking growth only as learning how to do new things, which is really only half of it, the knowledge and skills part of the blob. But developing one's mindset is what promotes learning. Practicing creativity helps with discovering what to explore. So if if you if I in order to be well-rounded, you do have to you have to show that you are well versed in all four of these areas, and One Stone has given opportunities to do all of that. And the most important part of the blob, I'd say, is failing forward, because the mistakes I've made at One Stone are probably what are going to be most important for figuring out what to do in the future. mistakes I made at One Stone have improved my perception of failure, so I no longer have such a negative outlook on it. And I also gotten opportunities to practice working on a team and have actually begun to enjoy it more. Um, and I've also learned to use the research and writing skills not just for the sake of gaining knowledge, but to actually better myself and importantly increase my willpower to tough things out. And that's still got a long way to go, but and sometimes I feel like I have I'm really far behind, but I remember that what's more important is that I have I'm improving, and that I can't not expect myself to perfect everything. So unfortunately, I don't have time to share my influential moment, but there's a conclusion to draw based on it that my loneliness doesn't come from only a lack of social interaction, but from a lack of honest social interaction and natural social interaction where I'm not self censoring and where I'm not being forced into it. And that is what is going to be most vital to my mental well being as for the rest of my life. So that's not all I have to share, but that's all the time that you have to share. So, and then a couple minutes extra. So sorry about that. And thank you.
Great job, Allison. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for ending that way too. So we just wanted to hold a few minutes here. We have a hard stop at 7 to allow the attendees, audience, to share not feedback, but share any well wishes or any memories that you've had, or kind of anything positive you've experienced with Allison over her journey these last few years.
I can share, Allison, if I was going to make a prediction as to where your influential moment was going, if you scrolled up more, I think I would be taken back to your college essays. I had the privilege of reading your college essay, and I was moved by it to tears. I remember the moment in Paradise Point, the most recent one, so not 2020, but 2019, where I sat right next to you as you poured your heart out of like a truth of knowing of who you were, and in one of the most pivotal moments I think I've had at One Stone. Your bravery and your authenticity and your just willingness to move through all the phases of you and all the ways that you show up in your very honest way. Just it inspires me, and I wrote it in a one of my college recommendation letters that I'll give to you at graduation, spoiler alert. But I just find you to be one of the most creative perspectives that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And I love what you said earlier, and I want you to remember it forever, that a creative and inquiring perspective is not always convenient, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be shared. And I think that you have a way of looking at the world that is fantastic, and it gets us all thinking. And sometimes it's not the most convenient, but I hope that you continually know how much that voice is so needed, so wanted, and so valuable. And I think you've grown immensely in both expressing your voice, but also listening to others and seeing how they move through the world. I'm very, very excited to see where you go from here. I'm going to miss you dearly. And I've appreciated all the moments that we've had together. sometimes those lists of things, those are just ways for us to inspire, like you already articulated so well, the ways that we can grow in all the other parts of the blob. And I've seen you grow and you've helped me grow. So for that, I'm forever thankful and want to know what you're up to in the years coming. So please keep in touch.
I want to jump in. Allison, we've had a few moments where we've talked, mostly just the other day where you were in my office, and I enjoyed that so much, to get to know you and to get to know your perspective better than I have over the last 3 years. When I look at this disruption blob and I reflect on your experience at One Stone, I don't know if I could identify any other student who has grown as much as you have in so many ways. And I don't know what we would have been without you, but it would not have been the same going through One Stone without you as a student in our building. You have been such a joy to have, and a challenge when you wanted to fight for what was right for you. I love every part of the way that you graced us with your presence and went through your time at One Stone. I tell all of the students that when you leave, One Stone is your home and it's your place, and you are always welcome at One Stone. We have something that I stole this idea, this concept from a Stanford D School class, which is we have office hours for life. So if you ever need anything, if you ever want to talk to someone, if you ever feel alone or need comfort or need encouragement, that's when you call on us, because that's what we're here for. And we just care deeply about you. So thanks for being a part of the One Stone community.
I guess I get last word. Lots of as Mother's Day is this weekend, and so I'm thinking like, oh, what card am I going to get Camille? And it would be incredible to have just kind of thinking of you, and as you're talking, like I hope I don't forget in a card, and yet trying to hike the Grand Slam, attempting the Grand Slam. It was funny. After the third trail that we hit, I think the next day you reminded me, hey, we've only hit 3 of the 4. We need to hit all 4. And I was like, Allison, like everybody was destroyed. Everybody was so exhausted. Like, what are you talking about? We've had design labs together. We've had, one time we had a cybersecurity expert come in, and I said, Allison, if he says something you don't agree with, like just kind of hold it in and we'll talk about it later. And he said something and you bristled, and you said, well, if I don't agree with it, that's fine, but not if it's flat out wrong. Like, I can't let him lie to people. And I just like, I've got so many memories that I am going to treasure and I just enjoy, because I love to laugh. And kind of what Celestia said, your courage is inspiring. I remember one kid was going to tell an inappropriate joke to the whole community, and you just stood up and you stopped him before he could finish the joke. During political philosophy, when the things came up that you felt like weren't good, like just your courage in so many ways. I'm so thankful for it. Your growth in things like your self-realization. Hey, I stopped watching one animated series to another one that I felt like grounded me more, and was less fantastical. I guess I just felt inspired. You've changed me. We love you. We're gonna miss you. You've left a mark on One Stone, and we look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, Michael, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all we have for time tonight. And we'll just, thanks again. Great job, Allison, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I just realized how dark my webcam is. Was it this dark the whole time?
No.
Yeah, we
You
could
were
see you
good.
earlier.
Oh, okay. Because now it's creepy. Well,
See you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.